Welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We're very happy to have you here with us for our coffee chat. I'm Amy Klaus, Marketing Manager at Brooks Publishing, and I'm very happy to have Erin Barton and Justin Lane joining us today to talk about supporting children's language and preventing challenging behaviors at home. Before we start, just a couple tips about listening to the webinar. So you might want to close any other applications that take bandwidth on your computer for your best experience. If you have any audio problems, if you'll check the audio panel that's on the right-hand side of your screen, you can switch from either computer audio to telephone audio. That usually helps clear up if there's any static or fuzz. And if you have any questions, go ahead and type them in the question box, which is on the side, and we'll take questions at the end. Today's session is being recorded, and you'll receive the link to the recording in tomorrow's follow-up email, as well as a link to a certificate for attending today's webinar. So thank you again for joining us. I'm happy to turn it over to Erin Barton and Justin Lane.
Thank you so much, Amy. My name is Erin Barton, and I'm an associate professor at Vanderbilt. And I am going to talk a little bit about preventing challenging behaviors at home. But first, we're going to hear from Justin.
Hey everyone, I'm Justin Lane and I'm an associate professor at the University of Kentucky. And so I wanted to start us out and really thinking about communication and really social communication. And what I mean by that is how we share our wants and interests and needs in an interaction with someone else. So, a child with a parent or a child with another caregiver, whoever that may be. So, we think about communication and we think about, anything we can see those behaviors as actually, so challenging behavior is a form of communication. So we do need to understand, what we mean when we talk about social communication. So oftentimes when we talk about social communication, I think what comes to mind first is speech, so the words and phrases we use, that's probably the most common, thing that may come to mind. But, we also mean, pointing for things, reaching for things, facial expressions, output from a speech generating device, we all, can communicate in a variety of ways. So sometimes I may point or use words or a combination of things to try to share something with someone else. And for young children or for children in general, these communicative behaviors create opportunities for teaching. These are teachable moments. So if a young child points, we can give that child language around what they're talking. Here's this toy that they like. We can give them language around it. So all these things create these teachable moments. But like I said, challenging behavior is also a form of communication. So a tantrum can be communicating, that I'm not interested in doing this or I want to get out of this. We don't really think about those challenging behaviors as teachable moments. We really think about that being that we want to, make sure the environment's safe for everyone, for the child included, for peers, siblings, whoever that may be. So before a challenging behavior or once a child is calm, that's a teachable moment. So, and if we think about how we could promote or really create a language-rich environment, that can really reduce the likelihood of challenging behavior. So we really want to spend some time doing that. And when we think about creating a language-rich environment, we really want to think about increasing our responsiveness. So what that means is really thinking about you want to respond to all vocal and non-vocal behavior, because just like how you take turns in having a conversation with your friend, that's the same thing we want to do with a kid, right? We want to have that back and forth. So you're playing together, whether it's in a meal, with toys, whatever it may be, you're gonna, say something, and then you're going to, wait, and that waiting can feel like an eternity, right? Sometimes we'll say, wait about 5 seconds. And when you count to 5 in your head, that can seem like how long is this gonna keep going? So, but that really is giving the child time to create language, because language is a complex process and learning how to communicate can be really complex. So what we're trying to do is be good communication partners, give a lot of rich input, and then give the child time to respond. So these are just some of the tips. So, and while this is important, we want to do this, some of our kiddos may need a little extra help to know when and how to communicate. So what we may need to do then is think about how can we support their communication. And we give so much input around activities, or routines or meals, whatever it may be, that sometimes, especially when we're playing, a kid may not know what to do. What are the expectations for me here? So we really want to think about teaching those routines. So if a kid knows what to do with the blocks, or they know what to do with the little people play set, whatever it may be, then we can really narrow in and focus on that social communication. And so that way the kid knows what's expected. And that's gonna, that predictability is really gonna help with teaching, reduce the likelihood of challenging behaviors. Um, and just as a little side note, some of you may have kids or work with kids who don't really have a lot of great play skills. You wanna build on those because those are key, and that's a developmental area in and of itself, but also our foundation for teaching communication. But if those skills aren't there yet, physical play is okay too. Spinning your kid around, throwing them in the air, whatever it may be, we can put language around that as well. And some things you can do to provide some of that extra support is praise that teaches. So when you see the kid or doing something you liked or playing with a toy appropriately, tell them about it, in a happy way, like you have positive affect, tell them what you like about what they're doing. You could consider adding some visual support. So, especially for some of our learners who need more concrete representation of what's going on, it's okay to add those visuals. And then sometimes you may need to show a child how to be correct. Another way to think about that is a prompt. But really what we mean is you're doing something that gives the kid meaningful input and shows them, oh, okay, this is what you could do here. So I'm going to give you some of that extra support. So just some considerations, what is communication, how to be responsive, how to establish routines, and then you can provide a little bit more structure in thinking about how you could arrange the environment so your child communicates. And there's a variety of strategies listed on this slide, but in each of these have different goals, if you will. Sometimes it may be to teach requesting, sometimes to get a comment. Either way, it's built around a conversation. And what you're doing is really drawing a child's attention in to show them this would be a great time to communicate. And so just arranging that environment for a lot of kids may be enough. It's like, okay, you show me what to do. Now I know the expectations. So with all that, some kids may need a little extra support. So you're drawing their attention in, but but they're not giving you the language you're looking for. And so you're doing all these things. So what you could add to that is some of these general teaching procedures, that occur in the natural environment. So if I want to teach a kid new words and phrases, then a modeling procedure would be a great way to get started. So what that means is you're really focused on just getting the kid to imitate. Here's an opportunity to know when and how to communicate. Here's what you can do. So I want you to imitate this. And so that builds on their interest, gives them language, and tells them, oh, okay, this is what I could do here. So it's all embedded in this typical, ongoing activity or routines. And then another way, if a kid has the language, but they're not really responding to others or initiating, maybe first consider focusing on that responsivity. So you could ask an open-ended question, right? So I know you have this word or phrase in your repertoire, but I want you to use it now when I ask you a question. So, maybe I don't know what my kid wants to play with, but I can, offer a couple opportunities and then see what do they say when I offer these opportunities. And if they, if they don't give us that language we're looking for, then we go back to what I was talking about earlier. We can show them how to be correct. So, and by the way, when I say questions, please make it non-yes, no questions, because asking a kid yes or no question is not language that teaches. It happens. It's not the end of the world, but it's okay. Let's focus on those open-ended questions. And then finally, we're trying to increase those initiations. So you can use what's commonly referred to as a time delay procedure. So that's where the kid imitates, the kid's responsive. And now I'm going to arrange that environment, and I'm just going to sit back and wait. And if you don't use that new word or phrase, or you don't, you need a little extra support, I'm going to provide you that support. So you can combine all these things as well. This isn't just like this. You can put all these things together, and maybe you want to teach this new word or phrase around this toy, but you want to build on this other word or promote an initiation. So you can put all these things together and really give the child a way to communicate in a meaningful way. Because if I can communicate in a meaningful way, I'm less likely to engage in challenging behavior. I'm not saying it won't happen, but we are doing what we can in a preventative manner. And just one quick note, I talked about imitation and responding and initiating. Throughout all of this, we're looking for spontaneity. So anytime your kid uses those words or phrases on their own without you doing anything, that is to be celebrated, in a way of you're happy, positive affect, you're playing together, whatever it may be. So we're always looking for that spontaneity, but knowing that this may not be enough. So what we may need are a few extra supports and things to put in place in conjunction with this. And just so you know, all these things that have been referenced are handouts or guides that are free to download. So you see 2 sites listed here. They're both the same site, just the second one's a lot shorter URL. And then we have, my lab has an Instagram page, which is for quick tips. So if you just need a quick tip, something like that. So, but all this stuff is free to download. And if you have any questions about any of it, you're always free to email me directly. So, but I'll turn it over to Erin to talk about some of those things about we may need to put in place for challenging behavior.
Great, thank you so much, Justin. That information was really helpful and really important to think about as we start to talk about preventing challenging behavior, because as you said, challenging behavior is another form of communication. And when children engage in challenging behavior, we know that there is a reason behind it. They're using that challenging behavior to communicate something. And what our job is to start to figure out what they're trying to communicate through their challenging behavior, and to set up the environment such that we make the challenging behavior less likely, and we give them more appropriate and meaningful and effective communication strategies that they can use instead of the challenging behavior. One thing that I want to say right now, before I even go into any of these strategies, is that given the current state of the world, really, we expect, given the added stress, given we're all at home, given the major shifts in routines for most children out there, we know children are going to engage in more challenging behavior. We're more stressed, they see that, and also the routines have changed. And so we expect that children will engage in more challenging behavior. And so I don't want anybody out there, especially caregivers with young children at home, to think that they're doing anything wrong because they're seeing a surge or increases in their child's challenging behavior. We expect that, given all the changes. And so what I want to talk about a little bit about is how to prevent challenging behaviors from continuing to occur. And one of the best things to do is to make sure that children understand what our expectations are for them. And given all the shifts in what's happening right now in the world, this can be particularly important because the expectations are different. The expectations are quite different for young children right now. So this is just like Justin's handouts and infographics that he went over. This is an infographic. All of the things I'm going to share are freely available through a website that I'm going to share, so you can download, you can print, you can do whatever you want with them. In fact, I have some around my house as good reminders for me. And you can also share them widely. And you are also very welcome to email me if you have any questions. So as I said, one thing to make sure children understand is that they know what's expected of them, that they know what we expect out of them each day. And this is one of the handouts I have actually taped on my fridge right now, and this can be really important for preventing challenging behavior. Right now, I understand that families are being pulled in a million different directions, and it can be really hard to attend to your child when you also have to work, or you're dealing with somebody who's sick, or you yourself are sick, or you're just dealing with all the stress that's around. So one of the things that I want to encourage all of you to do is encourage all of you who are supporting families to encourage them to do, is to think about how they can add more opportunities to provide positive attention to their children. And that can certainly be descriptive praise, as Justin talked a little bit about, praise that teaches, but it also can just be a thumbs up or a kiss on the cheek or a hug. Or it also can be sitting and playing with the child. It doesn't have to be sitting and playing with the child. It can just be, a quick hug or a high five, but something that tells the child that you're attending to them, you see them, and you love them the most. Another thing that can be really important is to let children know when things are going to change. So establishing a predictable routine is important. That doesn't mean that everything has to occur at the same time. It just means that I would recommend establishing an order of events so that children start to understand that what is going to happen next, what is expected of them, and when it's going to happen. And you can let them know when it's going to happen by using some transition warnings. You can use timers, you can use a visual cue that you make up yourself. And you can help get children involved in making the transition warnings as well. They can set a timer. Providing a verbal reminder, that seems to be useful. So if children are starting to engage in challenging behavior before it gets really intense, once the challenging behavior gets pretty intense, then your job is just to keep them safe. Then it means that there's really no teaching that's going to happen during that time until they're calm again. But if you see it start to some of what we call the precursors, or the things that happen right before the challenging behavior, you can give them just one quick verbal reminder about what the expectation is, so that you can maybe stop it in its tracks. Justin talked a little bit about playing with your child, and I want to say that playing with your child is a great way to start to establish some routines and also give them some positive attention that they need. It doesn't mean you need to play with them all day, every day. It also could mean that you don't play with them every day. I understand. I mean, many of us are busy, and some days we just don't have an opportunity to really sit and play with them. You can use all those other strategies to give your child positive attention throughout the day. This is a quick handout that goes over prompting. Justin, Joseph's my son, so that's why I was thinking about that. Justin talked a little bit about some different prompts you can use when you get ready to start to have opportunities to teach your child new skills, new behaviors that are more appropriate than challenging behavior. You might use some of these. And this is one that's really important. As I said, once the child is engaged in challenging behavior, it's not an opportunity to teach them. Your job is just to make sure the child is safe. Draw minimal attention to the behavior, and that includes reprimands, avoiding giving reprimands. You might model taking deep breaths, and make sure once the child is calm, you calmly tell them how proud you are of them for calming down, which can be really important. This is another one that I have a couple copies of this around my house. This is really for adults who have young children, and it's just a good reminder about what to do when the challenging behavior is occurring, that it's important for you to stay calm, because if you react and get reactive and get stressed out, then the child sees that, and it might take longer for them to calm down. To really think about reconnecting and reflecting once the child is calm. And then we have these two other tips that seem really relevant right now. One is to make sure you take care of yourself and you engage in self-care, because it's going to be critically important that you are taken care of, so that you can take care of all of the people around you and your children. And then some other tips on distance learning. And the big thing that I want to emphasize is home can still be home, and that we right now should really be focused on the connections we have with our children and that relationship. And if engaging in homeschooling is detrimental or is negatively impacting your relationship with your child, then I would say try not to do it, or to do less of it, or skip it completely if that's an option. As I said, I promised this is a website to our lab, my lab, and the website is very much still in progress, but all of the handouts that I went over are available in that resources for caregivers tab. We also have Instagram. Please, you're welcome to, I'd love to have you follow us on Instagram, where we share all of the infographics we made. There are lots more, and we're always making new ones. And then a Barton Research Lab Facebook page.
Great, thanks so much, Erin and Justin. I have a 3-year-old at home, so many of these strategies, I think I should print out many of those handouts and put them on my fridge just to help my husband and I. So just a note, I'll put the links that were in the presentation in your follow-up email tomorrow, so everyone will have easy access to those. I'm happy to let everyone know we'll be giving away 3 copies of the Prevent, Teach, Reinforce for Families book. So it'll be a random giveaway from listeners, and so we'll reach out to the winners. And then everyone listening today, there's a 20% discount code. If you'll use, Erin, if you'll move to the next slide, there's a code, yep, Coffee Talk, 20%. So you can use that code throughout the end of June to get 20% on any of the resources on Brooks's site. And then we have more coffee chats. So if you're interested in other professional development opportunities, please check out that link. And every week we're doing presentations. And we also have a COVID-19 resources page for early childhood professionals. So there's some recorded webinars, there's some downloadable resources for sharing, like activities that you might want to share with families you work with, or just some other recommended reading. So now we'll open it up for questions. So if you have any questions for Erin and Justin, please go ahead and type it in there's a questions section of your webinar panel, and I will read them out. So, okay, let's see. So we have a listener who's curious if some of the strategies can be adapted for older children, so older than kids that are 5 or 6.
For sure. I think, everything that's been mentioned, I think it's really a core foundation for considering how you interact with your kid in general, whether that kid be 3 or whether that kid be 13. As far as playing with toys, maybe not with a 13-year-old, but language that teaches or creating a resource-rich environment, at least from what I discussed, is easily adaptable and can be used, and there's been some demonstrations of effectiveness with older individuals as well. So
Yeah, absolutely. Same for mine. All of the specific practices I talked about are based on principles that apply across the age span, really. The examples I used were more geared towards younger children, for sure, but absolutely, all of the practices are adaptable for school-age children and older, really.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
How about, do you have any specific suggestions for working with high-risk families if a professional is trying to share information with a family they're working with?
So I think one of the most important things during this time is to try to either maintain or start to develop a relationship with the family so that you then are in a place where you can start to provide some meaningful support to them. That relationship piece with families is critical to be able to provide them with the support they need. So making sure that you are engaging with them in ways that are meaningful, using the mode of communication that works best for them, whether that's text or email or phone, and that you are working on building that or maintaining. If you have a strong relationship with them, great. Then I would work on continuing to maintain that relationship with them. And then once you have that relationship with them, then you can kind of get into the details regarding the additional supports that they might need. One thing that I tell all of my students, and I think is so important right now too, so critically important right now, is to know what your community resources are. One of the kind of silver linings I think of this time is that so many people in communities are really stepping up to provide support to people who may have lost their job, or families who need additional supports, who have lost access to resources or lost resources. And so making sure that you know what the resources are that are available in the communities with where the families live that you work with, and help families access those resources.
I think that's right. And I think the only thing I would add to that, I think that's wonderful advice, is to make sure we see everything as a victory. So celebrate every small victory. And it's not small. Every victory is a victory, that we don't have to quantify it. And then I think be aware of, still be present of cultures, values, and beliefs around this, and just being there and supporting people and making sure that, establishing that relationship. I think that's, sometimes we forget some of those things, but just making sure that you have that meaningful relationship with them in a way that isn't putting too much on them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that connection that we have right now to our own children and the families we work with is really going to be critically important.
We have a couple questions about really young children, so 15 months or even a little younger, that aren't really using language yet, but they are expressing challenging behaviors. And if you have any recommendations on that?
Yeah, so I think a lot of these strategies are going to be very different with younger children who are 15 months or even younger. But remember that challenging behaviors are still communicating. And remember that children, I mean, young 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, 1-year-olds, they're just learning how to be social, how to communicate. And language, as Justin said, and social behaviors are so incredibly complex. That it's really our job to support families, to support their children in learning those behaviors. And these days we are going to see more of them. So we might see children kind of revert back to old challenge behaviors that they used before. And it's our job to continue to maintain that relationship with them, try to provide nurturing and responsive support to them. And with young children, and Justin can talk more about this, but communication can be embedded into the things that families are already doing. So communication can be embedded into, getting dressed or bath time or any meal times, and certainly playtime if there is a playtime during the day that is accessible to families. But teaching infants effective ways of communicating that aren't challenging behavior can be embedded using all the things Justin talked about throughout the day.
Yeah, I think the only thing that just to stress with that is that that consideration of multiple modalities of communication. I do think we default to speech sometimes, and that's okay. It's just a matter of thinking about helping your child develop a reliable way to communicate. And developmentally, a 15-month-old or a younger child, they're not going to be the most advanced when it comes to articulating everything. So I think it's giving them language, but also really paying attention to all the ways they communicate. So maybe taking a step back and like, oh, this is what they're trying to share with me, like body positioning. So if I turn my body away, that communicates I'm not really interested in that. So it's, I think thinking, just spending some time really getting to know all the ways we communicate.
Yeah, and pointing, right? I mean, that might be all you require of a 15-month-old right
Yeah.
now. It might not be the time to teach a whole lot of new skills.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're receiving lots of comments that this was a really great webinar and lots of thanks for both of you as presenters, including one person who said it was the best webinar they've taken during this time. So, and they've been taking a lot of them right now. So that's wonderful to hear. Thank you for sharing that. We had a couple requests to see if any of the resources you shared are available in Spanish.
We are working on that. We don't have resources right now available in Spanish, but we're working on it. I don't know if Justin does.
We don't right now. We're in the process of trying to do that. We are a little resource limited when it comes to just accessing people given the time period, but we are working toward that.
So I will add that the National Center for Pyramid Model Innovations, NCPMI, has many really useful resources in Spanish that cover a lot of the topics we talked about today. So I would direct you to that website.
Great. And I'll include that URL in the follow-up email as well as the other links that you shared today. Here's a question about what are your thoughts on effectiveness of picture cards around the house and or sign language to encourage language?
Well, I think first with visual support, if you think picture cards in the sense of, I'm assuming maybe as visual supports is how they're being described. I think that any of us can benefit from a static representation of expectations. I have things that I use maybe that are written, but like in my planner or things like that. But you can, I think, incorporate any sort of visual as a way to provide a concrete representation of expectations. And then as far as signs, I think any mode of communication should be honored in any way, and I think as far as your collaboration with other professionals about building on that communication is vital in that sense.
I agree.
Thank you. Let's see, a few more questions. Any suggestions for supporting children that are in foster care?
So I think actually I would say all of the things that I talked about related to routines, related to helping children understand where they're going to be each day and what's going to happen each day. So children who are already in somewhat of a stressful situation, and then this added to it, can, be quite stressful for young children. And so making sure that they understand what's expected of them, creating as predictable of a day, and helping them understand where they're going to be each week, where they're going to be each day, what's expected of them, is going to be very important to help them understand what's going on and to prevent and reduce challenging behaviors. And then making sure that there are adults in their lives who are working really hard to establish nurturing and responsive relationships with them. Making sure that there are adults in their lives who are giving them positive attention throughout the day, so that they know that they're loved and they're cared for, and that that people are there to support them.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Um, are there other terms or phrases that can be used besides calm down when a child is not self-regulated or experiencing challenging behaviors?
Well, first of all, I don't think you ever have to say calm down. When the child is engaged in challenging behavior, you might not say anything at all. You might just model taking deep breaths, and helping the child stay safe. That really is most important when the challenging behavior is happening, to stay calm yourself. And then once it's done, once the challenging behavior is over, which can take some time, but once the challenging behavior is over, then you can say things like, wow, you did such a good job calming your body, or I'm so proud of you for taking deep breaths, or so I think that's what I would say, is to avoid saying calm down when the challenging behaviors happen. But you can talk about their physical body. You can talk about taking deep breaths. You can talk about being still. Justin, I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
The only I would think, just to add to that, I think that's wonderful, is to you can even teach as a form of environmental arrangement, not in the moment when the challenging behavior is happening, but think about those times that seem to set the stage for those challenging behaviors, and you can do some teaching around that. So you can arrange an opportunity where, let's say your child melts down if their sibling takes their favorite toy, and like they're wanting to hit and do all these sorts of things. Well, you can talk about, language you could put around that, and then supporting them in that. No, that's my toy. Whatever language it may be, it's okay to teach a child to say, to communicate disinterest or displeasure. So you just don't want to do it in that moment, because, think about if you're upset and how hard it can be to focus. So it's not a great time to really teach. And we don't want them to feel like they have to cry or get upset for us to give them that attention.
Great. Thank you. We're coming close kind of to our end here, so I'll take just a couple more questions before we sign off. But we had someone who asked, what suggestions would you have for children who are deaf with parents who are also deaf?
Well, so quite honestly, all of the strategies should work, and you just have to make sure that you are able to communicate and build a relationship with that family. So it means that you either need to also speak sign language with the family, or you need to have somebody there who does, a translator there, an interpreter there who does. But all of these strategies should work in the same way and should be critically important. You will have to think differently about the modality of communication, right? Because there are they will use sign language, and so you will have to make sure that that's what you focus on. But otherwise, all of the strategies should also work and be relevant.
Great, thanks. Let's see, let's take a couple more. So this is from a professional and a parent who's working at home and helping other families on this topic. And she's wondering how she can help her own child with communicating that she's working at home, but also still be there for them
Yeah,
while she's working. So I think a lot of people are in that situation.
absolutely. And I would say building a routine that maybe if you know your schedule ahead of time, great, then I would build in some times in the day when you are available for your child, if that's what works for your family. And you could use you could make your own red light, green light that tells the child right now I'm working. And then when you turn it to green, maybe that, or you show a green sign or a go sign, that tells the child that you're ready to play. You can use a visual timer to help cue the child to know when you're going to be available, or you could use pictures and a visual schedule to let your child know, I need you to play with your blocks, for this long. And then once you're done playing with your blocks, I'm going to come out and I'll be able to play with you for a little bit more. So I would say build a predictable routine or schedule so that the child knows when you're going to be available, and use visual cues to help the child know when you are available. Now, know if these visual cues are new, and it sounds like they probably are, they certainly are for me and for many families, you're going to have to teach the child what they mean. So they're not going to work perfectly at first. It's going to take some time before the child understands what they mean and understands, how to use them. But they will start working after some time.
I think maybe the only thing to add to that is think about when it's not, like if you have a day in your schedule where maybe you don't have as much work to do, to role play or practice.
Yeah.
Like go through that schedule routine and just, so that way they know that I'm going to get that attention at the end of this. So it'd be like this really contrived brief thing, but maybe just, and it goes along with what Erin was saying about teaching what things mean.
Yeah. And I would say make sure you follow through, make sure that you only schedule that time when you can attend, that the child, so that when the child expects you to be there, that you for sure are there, because that's going to make the teaching more efficient.
Thank you. We'll take just one last question before we sign off. When might challenging behaviors indicate something more like sensory issues?
So challenging behaviors are always communicating something. So it doesn't necessarily, not that it doesn't matter, but if the child is engaged in challenging behavior because they don't like how loud it is, or they don't like the way a certain clothing item feels on their body, or they don't like, a type of food, then Justin mentioned earlier, we need to teach the child how to let us know that they don't like something. And so, and all of us have, there's a range of kind of sensory input and needs that all of us have. And so I think what I would say, and if you're supporting a family with this concern, or if you yourself have this concern, is that really all of these strategies and practices will also be meaningful and effective. And just to remember that those challenging behaviors are always communicating something. And so it could be that they want more of whatever that sensory input is, or they want less of it. And we need to teach them how to communicate that.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's taking some time to really sit down and look through all the ways in which a child communicates, and that will help you then give, like Erin said, give language around that, like I need more or less of that. So we're respecting what they're communicating, but we need to make sure they're reliably communicating it. So
That's
it's okay,
right.
you just have to tell me in a way that I can understand.
Yeah, and that's going to be really important for children as they get older too, so that they can really advocate for what they want and they
Mhm.
need, and
Thank
that
you.
they like.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for answering all the questions and for presenting. And we really appreciate everyone who is joining, listening today. And we hope everyone has a great rest of your day and a great weekend. So
Thank you.
thank you all.
Yeah.
Bye.